Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Liz and this is A Catholic Mother's Journey. I'm really pleased you're joining me today. So today I felt like the Lord wanted me to speak on here about how we are called to make sacrifices, aren't we? To do penance, as we call it in the Catholic Church. In the Bible, Jesus himself tells us to pick up our cross and follow him, doesn't he? And there are many purposes for making sacrifices. It can be for the reparation of our sins, for the salvation of souls, for spiritual growth, for growth in holiness, and we can acquire graces and merits. Now, we all have some form of suffering in life, don't we? Whether that's big or it's just little things, those little everyday things that happen in life. This video is all about how we can take those things, those little everyday things, and we can use them as sacrifices and unite them to the Lord's sacrifice on the cross. And when we do that, it becomes something very powerful. In this way, small everyday suffering becomes an opportunity for powerful sacrifice. So I'm saying we don't need to necessarily ask for new sacrifices, do we? We don't have to take on new suffering necessarily, because we all have these little setbacks, these annoyances, these grievances, those things that just don't go the way we want to in life. And we can take those things as an opportunity, offer them up to the Lord, unite them with his suffering, and they become a powerful sacrifice. So we don't need to look for new opportunities. Those opportunities are already there. But are we letting those opportunities fall to the ground, or are we using them? They're all there already. So we just need to remember to take them. So, for example, you don't need to go on a 40-day fast just to feel like you're really making a sacrifice. I mean, maybe you're called to do that. I'm not saying don't fast. Obviously, the church directs you to fast, and there may be reasons to fast, absolutely. But I'm just using that as an example. We don't necessarily have to take on something new like that just to create new sacrifices, as it were, because we already have potential for making them in the everyday. So when we take those little things, those little difficulties we face in the everyday, and offer them up as sacrifices in love to the Lord, they become something powerful and valuable. For example, that problem, that issue you have at work, say you've got a difficult colleague, your boss has been difficult to you, whatever it is, you can be like, that thing today, I'm going to bear it with patience. I'm not going to grumble. I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to bear this today. And that's very powerful. In this way, we can take negative experiences that we go through in life, just those little things, and we can turn them around for something good. It could be anything like being stuck in traffic, experiencing road rage, whatever it is. We can turn those unhappy things around and use them for good. They can be very small as well. Any sacrifice, however small, is acceptable and pleasing to God. And it's about bearing it quietly, isn't it? It may be that you're not to tell anyone about it, and you're just bearing that thing with a joyful heart and without grumbling or complaining. It's easier said than done sometimes, isn't it? It's very easy, for example, to think along the lines of, well, I'll do this thing, I'll take the bins out tonight. My husband would normally do it, but I'll be really good tonight. I'll take them out myself so he doesn't have to do it. But then later on, you can't resist but tell him what you've done and actually be a bit annoyed with him because he didn't do it first. That's undone the point, hasn't it? We're supposed to just do these things without any grumbling about it or letting people know about it. We can look to the saints for inspiration here, can't we, of how they bore their trials and sometimes great suffering without any complaints. Speaking of my life for a moment, if you're not familiar with my channel, I have a son called George who's 11 years old and he's severely disabled. He can't walk or talk or do anything for himself, and he has complex medical issues. And over the past decade, it's been very difficult for him, of course, and the rest of us. There's been a lot of suffering and challenges and hardships that's come out of this. And when this all first started happening, my reaction was not to bear it without complaint. I'm just being completely honest here. My response was not very saintly. My response was, anger, very emotional, self-pitying, all those kind of things. Maybe it was understandable in a sense. It was very hard. but I certainly didn't bear my cross without complaint, and it's been a journey of learning how to do this more little by little. I've not got where I need to be, but actually when you start doing this and you bear things as the saints inspire us to do, it actually makes that cross easier to bear. Because you might think, well, I know that bearing these crosses, carrying these crosses without complaint, that is the truth path to holiness. But how do we do it? It's okay for the saints. They're a different breed, perhaps. We think that, don't we? But how can we do it? How can we do it? Well, as I say, when we pick up our cross and unite it with the Lord's, it makes it easier to bear. So when we take these little things that go wrong, or big things, big suffering maybe in our lives, maybe you're watching and you're going through something very difficult at the moment, but when we pick it up and unite it to the Lord's and we suffer together with him, it becomes easier for us to bear our cross too, because we're no longer suffering alone, we're suffering with him. So uniting our crosses to Jesus's cross, it's not just a means to an end, as it were, for the purpose of offering up our suffering for the reparation of our sins, for example, but it's also a means of enabling us to get through that thing we have to get through. It makes it easier because we're suffering with the Lord. This is what we need to be aiming for anyway. Again, the saints are very good at doing this. A very powerful, practical thing to do is to look at the cross, look at Jesus on the cross, look at a crucifix in front of you and meditate on his suffering on the cross. And then just picture yourself uniting your cross with his. It's a very powerful thing to do. And of course, whenever we go to Mass, we are participating in Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, aren't we? And remember that Jesus gives us the grace we need, don't we, to go through what we're going through, to go through those trials we're going through, even if it's just something little that might have upset you or happened. He gives us the grace to bear these things. So we can do all things through Christ, can't we? He gives us the grace to do it as long as we are relying on him. And the sacraments can strengthen us in this as well, can't they? Now, finally, those everyday sacrifices can become an opportunity for evangelism. So when we suffer and go through tricky things, but we bear these things without complaint, we bear them with joy in our hearts, that's a great example to others, isn't it, of how Christians can feel joy in the Lord despite what's going on around them. And when others see us with this joy in our hearts despite what's going on in our lives, they'll notice it. And for example, non-believers or Christians who are lukewarm, they might notice this and think, well, how can that person be joyful with everything that's going on in their life? And when they realise and discover that it's the joy of the Lord that's at the source of this, that's a great way of leading them to the Lord, isn't it? And again, the saints were good at doing this, and this is something that we can do as well. It's not always easy, of course, is it? It's also important as well, isn't it, for them to be aware that it is the Lord who's the source of your joy, and it's the Lord who's enabling you by his grace to get through this tricky time, because otherwise they might just think you're some sort of superhuman who can get through a really tricky time and still be happy. So I really hope this video has blessed and encouraged you today. Please do take a moment to like and share the video with anyone who comes to mind when you're watching who you think might like to see it. Thank you so much for watching today. I pray that you have a really blessed day, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. So until then, God bless. Bye.